Hello, everyone. Welcome to event. My name is Tyrus Kamau, one of the managers at Leverage Experts. And today we are delighted to have some very special guests to discuss this interesting topic around cybersecurity. So empowering CEOs and decision makers to protect the environment. And without wasting much time, I'd like to give my guests a chance to introduce themselves. So I have Bilel, he's based off Qatar in Doha. And we also have Lucas, who's based off Germany. So I'll give them about 2-3 minutes to introduce themselves. And before I do that, I'd like to introduce myself as well. My name is Tyrus Kamau. I'm a cybersecurity consultant, 13 years experience in the industry, with a major focus on governance, risk, and compliance. I've worked on several projects and several initiatives ranging from government, private sector as well, and non-governmental and organizations as well. My background is quite technical. I've also done a bit of research in cybersecurity. Currently based off Dubai in the UAE. And I'm pleased to be working with Leverage Experts, which is a collective of experts who are diverse in their different areas of expertise. And on this particular occasion, we are working on cybersecurity around the region. So I'd like to present this chance to my guests to introduce themselves, give a bit of background, and then we can just jump right into it. So feel free, gentlemen.
Thank you. Well, I'm with Lucas. You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'm Lucas Heil. I'm Chief Information Security Officer at Cohen Pharma. I'm in the security industry since 25 years, 20 years out of which I'm leading cybersecurity and risk management functions. I've done various architectures and risk management processes for critical infrastructure, but also for mid-sized and large companies.
Oh, brilliant. So I think that's my turn now to throw a small introduction. Well, my name is Bilel. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is the first and only cybersecurity company in the entire MENA region that develops its own proprietary technology. We specialize in offensive cybersecurity per se. So we do breach and attack simulations, deception technology, next generation attack surface management. We focus mainly on developing artificial intelligence tools to help organizations assess the security posture and develop their design of the security environments per se. Unlike Tyrus and Lucas here, I don't come from a technical background. I was more on the investment and strategy side, where I used to be venture capitalist with Qatar Development Bank, overlooking a portfolio of deep tech and fintech companies, including cybersecurity. And I worked as a strategy consultant for Fortune 500 companies in different topics, including product development, market penetration, go-to-market strategy, vertical integration, pricing, and so on and so forth. So I think, gentlemen, that's more of a wrap up of an introduction. So Tyrus, how do you want to kickstart this?
Oh, great. That's a very amazing background, 25 years, different backgrounds, investment. That's amazing. It's a great mix to have in this particular panel. And maybe just to jump right into it, I think based on what we're seeing globally, there's been a serious shift of cybersecurity, mostly from technical aspects to strategic and more resilience type of approaches towards cybersecurity. So perhaps I'd like to ask just a brief understanding and maybe how you've come through the journey. Lucas, for the past 25 years, how has the journey changed, especially in the approach towards cybersecurity from more of a technical perspective to more of a resilience approach, and how it is that you communicate this to the higher ups, maybe in the C-suite level?
Yeah, sure. 25 years ago, security was about putting in a firewall and an antivirus, and you were secure, right? Sort of. There's been a huge shift in that in the past years. When we've come through, well, it's compliance driven. It's your SOX company. You have to have your corporate governance to, well, maybe we have some risk to. We're actually facing organized crime on a daily basis. With all the ransomware gangs, ransomware as a service, where you basically are facing a total standstill of the company, we're facing multiple million dollars in ransoms. So we've come from a purely technical perspective about a few gadgets through, well, we have to do something for the regulators, to, well, there might be some risk to actually realizing that in this modern connected world, companies are under constant threat. And security isn't this one-shot exercise where you have your check mark on a checklist. It's really a function that needs to live and breathe, that needs to understand the current threat landscape, the changing threat landscape, needs to understand what specific attacks are happening against your company, and on the other side, how you protect it. How mature is your security program? How mature are your processes? How are you integrated with the rest of the organization? And it's starting to sink in that security is everybody's responsibility at the end. We will only be successful as a security function if we can support the other functions to be secure. If we can support our users to understand not to click on that link, not to enter their login information somewhere, because in the end, one user account that's leaked through a phishing email can lead to a full compromise of the company. Happened a couple of times to a couple of companies, and that's why we're currently very much focusing also on managing the human risk.
Oh, so, great. Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing, Lucas. And it's interesting you mentioned that, yeah, cybersecurity was really never a conversation in the corporate world 10, 15, 20 years ago. But now you're saying that these are conversations that are actually getting even into the governance levels of the organization. So in boards, in committees, we have security committees. So Bilel, especially coming from an investment background, whereby you are not exposed to technology as much, how have you seen the shift that, technology is just becoming one of the single functions that is being discussed at the group level, at the CEO level, and also at the governance level in the board? How has that shift for you been in your journey in your career? Oh, sorry, Bilel, I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. So from an investment perspective, it's a very interesting topic to navigate. I mean, even giants aren't really invincible. We have Target, Yahoo, Uber, Home Depot, Equifax, and all despite having a multi-million-dollar cybersecurity environments in place, they still fell victims to cyber attacks, suffering from substantial financial losses and breaches of critical consumer data. So it's quite an interesting way for executives, especially from the other side of the equation, not from the investor equation, is that understanding the landscape of security is crucial to managing and mitigating risk effectively. I mean, this includes being aware of the current threat landscape, understanding the unique vulnerabilities of each vertical, because as an investor, we were more on the generalist side. But so there are unique challenges for each vertical, for each kind of organization that they face, and the needs of these organizations making informed decisions on the investment on cybersecurity. So there are two things that we actually saw, is that one, the investment in the IT infrastructure itself is not quietly met with a parallel investment in the cybersecurity environment. So a company will always have, if they have the trade-off to spend $1 on marketing, spend $1 on cybersecurity, they will always spend $1 on marketing. Or otherwise, they don't really see the trade-off that cybersecurity attack, actually cyber attack, can cause more brand loss of the brand disposition more than what other circumstance can happen. And the other side of the equation, large companies have their own challenges versus small, medium-sized enterprises have their own challenges too. So for large corporates, yes, they can afford to have some layers of cybersecurity, but again, they become a highly targeted organizations for the nature of the work that they do. For example, there is a bank here in Qatar where as it grew in size, we saw that the number of attacks has grown with it, and the level of sophistication of attacks has grown with it too. So yes, it has to be, the cybersecurity has to be upgraded as you go as well. For the small, medium-sized enterprises, they may not be as targeted as large corporates because the majority of these attacks are usually motivated primarily by financial gains. They may not be really that targeted, but the critical integration between the small, medium-sized enterprises and the large corporates into the tech level can be quite dangerous if it's not quietly appropriated. So it's understanding the potential financial impact of cybersecurity breaches can help executives weigh the cost of investing in security. So it's really it is really trade-off. And proactive investing in cybersecurity can significantly reduce the risk and potential costs of breaches. I mean, if you see in the past 10 years or so, we can see that the cost of the data the breaches has been an exponential growth as the digital landscape evolved bit by bit. And despite having all of these regulatory infrastructures in place, the regulatory compliances, and endless numbers of certificates a company can have, and they can still be actually widely attacked. There's an example I always tell several of my clients that I had a client of mine, which I'm not particularly going to name, but they had some parking meters in their buildings, and all of the infrastructure was actually quite secure, but except for those parking meters, so they were being hacked for 2 months without them knowing through those parking meters. So it's really interesting to understand the different layers of your security and to understand how severe things can get. You're on mute, Tyrus.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. So that's a very interesting insight, and you raised a very interesting point, because then the cost right now is not just financial. Financial is just one of the costs for cyber breaches. And one of the best things I like telling my clients is that compliance is not equals to security. Those are two different things. You can have your compliance guys coming and checking everything. You have all the right certificates. Your mandated frameworks are okay. But then that doesn't assure you that you're secure. So one of the hardest conversations that I think we have as professionals, and maybe I'd like to give you maybe like 5 minutes just to give you experience, is how do you communicate to the governance level of an organization? So for instance, you walk into a board meeting and you can't go with the nitty-gritties of the manager in security, the CISO is doing this and everything. But then how do you communicate to the governance team, the board members, that hey, these are some of the risks that we have currently, these are the threat levels, these are the exposures we have as a company, we have this amount of prudential professional indemnity, or maybe say $1 million in the event we are stuck with ransomware because business has to go on. Do you advise them to actually pay for ransomware? And at the same time, how then do you make them understand? How do you dumb down the threats and also the risk appetite that the organization has vis-a-vis to the strategic goals that the organization has? So perhaps, Lucas, what has the experience been at these levels with these conversations?
Well, the most crucial part of this is preparation. I'm evaluating risk according to valuation tables that are agreed with top management. So when we talk about a critical risk, it's a critical risk to them. When we talk about a moderate risk, it's a moderate risk to them. And typically for anything below a major risk, that's really just a few numbers, and we have so many medium risks, so many low risks, but it's not front and center. I mean, the critical risks are typically what's most interesting. So focus on the 2-3 most relevant critical risks. And those can be financial risks, but could also be regulatory compliance, could be a legal risk, could be reputation risk. So we're rating impact towards the various different categories, and we do an indicator on what level of threat we're experiencing. Are we under targeted attacks? Or do we right now see the situation a bit more relaxed? We demonstrate the state of the security program. We're basically using the NIST framework for that, using the maturity, so we can visualize the state of what our security program is in, basically just based on one spider graph. So we can demonstrate, okay, we should be a 3 here, 4 there, and but we're basically a 1.5 here and a 3 there, and we're a 4 here. We may be overspending. So that's basically how I go about communicating. But again, the main issue is speaking the same language. If we start talking about, well, we have 45 passwords that are easy to guess, and you lose the room. It's really about connecting back to the business risk and talking about business risk, talking about risk to production, talking about risk of stolen intellectual property. That's something people can relate to in a boardroom. But if you talk about, well, we have this vulnerability assessment service, and they say we have 35 critical vulnerabilities, what does it mean? What does it mean to the business? So whenever I go into the boardroom, I lose all the tech speak. I lose all the technical details. It's really about the business, and that's what businesses do. They manage risk. And my job as CISO is to help them manage their cybersecurity risk, which ultimately might affect their business. And that understanding, that bridge, is what I'm building on going in there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I like what you said. Yeah, the minute you walk into that door, you lose your tech speak. It's all about the strategic goals of the business, and also just putting the customers in mind as well. Because remember, I think businesses exist in the business of doing business, and they cannot get lost in the details of having to think about, what's the latest vulnerability. That's definitely not the executive's job. And how we as security and cybersecurity consultants, as experts, as professionals, we communicate, it really does inform them on whether they make critical decisions on that. And Bilal, I'd probably like to throw this spanner in the works to you. How do you communicate financing and budgets at this level, knowing that for a couple of years, maybe up until maybe 10 years ago, cybersecurity was always an afterthought. There were no budget allocations. It was always bundled up with IT, as technology department. That was the department that they shared. But now we are seeing progressively and increasingly that budgets are being dedicatedly put into cybersecurity. And if you look at the amount of investments that have gone into cybersecurity, even in the research and development arena, when you look at startups that have come up for cybersecurity, there's almost tens of millions of USD that have been thrown into cybersecurity. So then how do you communicate, and how do you convince the board that, yes, we need to inject some bit of money in terms of budget allocations for this quarter or the next quarter for the next 5 years, in ensuring that our business stays in line with catching up or trying to keep up with the latest threats and mitigating against them?
Actually, that's a very interesting point to tap at. I'm going to have to take sides with Lucas here. I mean, investors in general, which okay, so we have to separate boards, because there are many kinds of boards and many types of boards. You're talking about a board of a tech company, which is usually who? Which is usually founders and investors and venture capitals mainly, and a few angel investors if there's any. And if there's any sideboard, probably from a technocrat's perspective, but they have to understand that business continuity is a major concern for any organization. A serious security breach can disrupt operations, can halt services, as a result of not just financial losses. So yes, Lucas was absolutely right. These guys have to understand that whatever stake they own of that company is in complete jeopardy. Otherwise, they won't take any actions to it. All of the technical jargon that you might actually tell them how vulnerable you are, they won't buy it. Example, the 2020 ransomware attack at Garmin, which is a GPS technology company, I mean, caused them a multi-million-dollar outage of its services, affecting millions of dollars of users worldwide. We're talking about a company who was actually distributing as well some of the medical supplies to some of the rural areas too. So, and these companies, this company per se had a board of people who understand tech, who understand the risks comes with investing in tech companies, and with the severity of these attacks, a new concept emerged with boards these days, even with the investment strategies these days, is the protections of assets. So organizations of all types and sizes, they store valuable variable data, and data is like any other asset, right? So if compromised, could cause substantial harm. So harm is not just in terms of, so harm doesn't just affect the company itself. So affect the company, the client, the brand, the investors, and everyone who have a stake in that company from the ecosystem it operates within. So it's really interesting to see things from that perspective. I mean, it's a quite sophisticated place to be at. If I were to add to this particular line of thought, I would say that it's really interesting to see boards nowadays dedicating specific budgets for cybersecurity. What I would say is that these budgets are more relevant in more geographical areas than others. So, for example, if you dedicate a certain budget to buy, I don't know, insurance, a cyber insurance that would actually recover your losses, if any, you can do that in the western part of Europe, in Northern America, while in GCC it's still rolling out. So I mean, you being a tech company that can you can dedicate budget, but again, the level of that budgets vary a lot, and where are you based, and in the nature of activity that you do as well. So it's important as well to communicate this very transparently to the investors, or to the board, which is usually investors and stakeholders, and that there should be minimum of cybersecurity layer that is being have to cover a lot of it. Some of them, as you quite said, some of them will go directly to the certification route, which is certification, which is usually I don't know, HIPAAs or any of these certificates, which doesn't necessarily give you the protection, but it gives you more of best practices, which usually hackers mutate them in no time. Hackers go around these organizations in no time. So that's, I would say, quite an insight from my perspective.
Oh, great. I can actually see we have some questions already. So for those who are joining us, welcome very much. We're almost halfway in a very interesting conversation that is empowering CEOs and decision makers to protect their organizations against cyber threats. So I can see there's a speaker here called Jean-Claude who probably has a question. So what you can do, you can just post your questions in the chats as we move along, and we'll be able to address them in good time. So I love what it is that you said, Bilel, and the truth is that yes, there's so many diverse boards, and there are always these other boards within boards. Like for instance, you could have a cybersecurity committee that is embedded into the decision-making board, the strategic board within an organization.
Yeah.
And then one of the other concerns that I've come across is that it's how the board appreciates the risks that you present to them. So for instance, like Lucas said, lose the jargon, just go to them and, just dumb it down to them in a way that they'll be able to make a decision on the go. And by the end of that meeting, a decision has been made across the organization. So one of the other challenges that I think I've come across is, how do you then have the right people on the board who appreciate cybersecurity? Because there's a chance as a consultant or even as a CISO of an organization, then you'll have an input as to who is consuming the information that you're providing to the board, right? So what caliber of person would you be looking at, Lucas, from your perspective?
Well, typically there should be some sort of a security sponsor on the board who actually understands the risk and is sort of the cybersecurity champion on the board. I mean, I would recommend cybersecurity champions across the organization, pretty much every function. But in top-level management, in the board, it is important that those substantial risks to the business, which they are today, are understood. And I mean, Bilel mentioned insurance. I've gone through a couple of those insurance exercises. Getting insurance 10 years ago was easy. They would just sign you and would be happy about the money they collect. But ever since, the insurance companies have learned a lot of lessons. So whenever you want insurance, you have to prove to them that you have a working and adequate cybersecurity program. So that's something that risk champion needs to get that kind of awareness out to the board. And in the end, if we talk about insurance, we talk about 5, 10, 20, 30 million insurance for cyber risks. Higher policies typically aren't available. And in a large company, that can be the cost of forensics. Not even covering a single dime of what you lose on the shop floor if your production systems are compromised and the factory comes to a standstill. So this kind of risk awareness is something that needs to be promoted, that people need to understand that it's no longer, well, you know, it's a virus and something strange happens, somebody sends spam. It's really a critical risk that can result the company to cease to exist.
Actually, Lucas, if I were quickly to recap on that, I work very closely with insurance companies who do roll out or who do underwrite cyber insurances. The reason is that they're quite pricey and they require a lot of some form of an adequate cybersecurity program, as you called it, or what they call the ideal design of the cybersecurity environment for them to enter in such engagement. Is their inability to quantify risk. That means that their inability to identify the risk, or their inability to profile the risk. So based on that, so what they're doing is that they're playing the stat game. So they're modeling it in a statistical way, is that whatever happens, that's they can always hedge against that risk. But now insurers are slowly moving from that trend, but introducing new ways to profile the risk and identify them, and they can roll out more affordable insurance policies that can make more sense for the two sides of the equation. I mean, can make more sense for the insurers, as they can understand better what are the risks associated with an A organization or a B organization, and second is that the organization itself, they can have a better policy to recover from whatever attack that can happen. So it's I mean it's like a chicken and egg problem. I mean, the chicken being that the technology is on a constant change. And insurers has to find a way to keep up with that, and at the same time updating those models. So unless you are AAG that has the capacity and the financial muscle to do such a thing, the rest will simply play the stat game, which is modeling the risk until they beat the game itself.
And I think you touched on a very important point. If we're honest, there is no way to actually really quantify cyber risk. We can approximate through qualitative models, but we can't really provide an exact dollar value like value at risk or other quantitative approach. In the end, we will always have to talk in qualitative risk terminology, and that's also something that's new to some boards to understand. Hey, there isn't an exact dollar value that I can budget for, and that's somehow correct. It's if you look at those events that really cost a lot of money in cyber risk, those events are stochastic. You can't just predict them, and you can't give a correct annual loss expectancy and stuff like that, which is quite easy if you for instance if you do investing in shares.
Absolutely, I agree that. And when you think about it, I mean, I'll just take two recent examples that happened. One happened last week, early this week, I think. That was TCMC, who suffered some ransomware attack. And the other one was sometime 2 weeks ago, courtesy of the MoveIt ransomware that also had a company probably fork out about $4 million US. So again, I think underwriting for insurance is really, like you said, it's not straight cut. You know, it's not a cut through. It's not definitive. It's mostly very quantitative, and the communication to the governance level of the organization to make these decisions has to be very clear that we are not in, it's not like a motor vehicle where I know the value of my car, I know the exact value of it, dollar value, and I know the liability, and I know how much I can underwrite it, I know the principal I need to pay for it. In cyber, it's very fluid, and again, it's also very layered. And which also now brings me to a very interesting conversation that has had me thinking. So for instance, let's assume in Lucas that you're the chairman of an amazing fintech company, blue chip company, 100 million USD revenue, and you suffered a breach. How do you tackle the PR front of communicating not just to your shareholders, but also to the public? So what's the PR strategy that you would employ to communicate that, yes, we as an organization have suffered a breach, and these are the steps that we're taking to ensure that your data is still safe with us or your money is safe with us?
Since we're a fintech company and we're well prepared and we have a good security program that we can defend, I definitely would choose transparency. Yeah. Because in the end, every company can be breached at a certain point in time, and it's more a question of when, not if. And the main goal of the communication is to maintain and reestablish trust. And that means showing people, okay, we have been affected, we are doing the right steps, we are working with the right kind of competencies, with the right kind with the right authorities, and we have a response team in place, and so on. So basically, establishing that okay, we've been compromised, but we're prepared for that. We are in control of the situation, or we are about to be in control of the situation, and we do everything basically to make sure that your data and your money is safe.
Bilel, how would you tackle the press in your face? You've suffered a breach, you've breached a couple of GDPR clauses, and everyone is coming for your neck. Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry again. So I think what you're asking is that how would we react if there's a breach in our organization?
Yes, and also how do you communicate? Because accepting and acknowledging that you have a breach is one thing, but then how do you communicate as the leadership of the organization, not just to the public, but also to your shareholders, to your customers? How do you continue to inspire confidence for them to remain with you?
Well, there's no size fits all in this particular answer. It really depends on where what kind of business are you running. Today, I'm running a cybersecurity company. So if I run a cybersecurity company that tries to help people secure their environments, and I get breached, I think there will be more damage on the brand disposition side more than anything else. But for the sake of of the conversation, I would generalize. What are the best practices to communicate effectively. I would actually have to side again with Lucas, and this is transparency is key. They have to understand that the level of this attack in the organization, how is that can be quantified in terms of losses, how is that can be mitigated in the future, how did that happen? Was it a malconfiguration? Was it a poor cybersecurity design in place? Was it the inability of the company to adopt appropriate cybersecurity, the defenses in place? Is it a human component? Is it a human element? Because the human element is still the weakest link in the entire chain. So is it something else? Is it a zero-day attack? So I think the answer to this question can be $1 million question to the company, and because that would have the board understand what went wrong. I mean, they say you can never fire a CISO for purchasing some Cisco, right? So it's if you're having the best practices in place, and I mean attacks happen, and the board has to understand that there was nothing to do for a zero-day attack. But if there's a malconfiguration from the company, I mean, we have an endless examples of companies across the past 10 years or 15 years where they knew there have been vulnerabilities inside their organizations, and they decided to overlook it on purpose because they didn't think it was important, or they didn't think that a dollar spent there would actually be better off spent elsewhere. So it's really it's answering these set of questions can set a proper context for the leadership to understand what goes wrong and can prevent it in the future. But if you're dealing with sensitive industries like healthcare or banking industry, or any industry that has a data-driven mission in place, it's crucial to have a mechanism in place to have a proper trainings for employees, to have a proper incident response plan, to have a regular audits on the company, to have so the board has to be engaging in this, and the board has to push this rather than come an accountability phase, because it's easy to point fingers. It's easy to point and that where things can go wrong, but the board takes part of the blame too if they weren't engaging from the first day in pushing the company and securing the entire thing. They own a stake in the company, so they should understand that as well. So if the shareholders don't push for an adequate cybersecurity program, do you think that people who work for a salary would?
No, no one would be bothered.
You see my point? So there's it's a multi-faced answer here. So where I cannot really give you one straightforward answer. So it depends on a lot of metrics.
Great, and I think that brings me to a question I'm seeing on chat. So maybe Bilel, Lucas, you can take on this. How do you maneuver the acceptance between risk versus the awareness, the critical impact of cyber risk as well to the C-level?
Lucas, you want to go as a CISO?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, that again comes down to that very initial conversation about what are critical impacts, what are major impacts, and so on. Part of that discussion is a discussion around appetite for risk. So which risk is the company ready to take? And I mean, Bilal said it right. There's some stuff that's just sitting there. People know about it and have kept quiet about it. And that's exactly where I put on my risk manager hat. And you can accept it, but you have to accept it consciously. If you accept it consciously, it features in risk overviews, and it's on the heat map and so on. So and you basically get an understanding of the total risk, rather than having this unknown accepted risk. I mean, that's the worst that you can have is not know about a risk that you're accepting because you're ignoring the risk. And using that conversation is typically quite helpful in getting an appetite for risk in the end. Because the days of just accepting cyber risk are over. If the risk has to be accepted on the appropriate level. So if I have a 10 million risk, it's probably a CXO signing for that. And I don't mean that figuratively. I mean that literally, signing off on it, like with any contract that they would close. It's a potential 10 million spent for the company. And having their name on the risk acceptance, that's a different thing than just saying, yeah, it's okay, next topic. So really establishing this level of accountability for risk is one of the key activities.
Actually, if I were to add as well to that particular to a particular point, is that there is no good of insulin shots when you've been eating sugar for the past 20 years. So if you have so my point actually by saying that is that you have to establish a risk aware culture. I mean, foster a culture within the organization that acknowledges and understands the importance of cybersecurity from day one. This can be achieved actually from multiple angles. But if they understand from day one that how important is it, you wouldn't be having that conversation in the first place. So being proactive, investing proactively in your infrastructure, and being adequate proactive, I don't know, by regular pen testers, regular offensive cybersecurity in place. I mean, all of these programs decreases the probability. So yes, there's no absolute security. It's a game of decreasing the probability, and decreasing it to a minimum. It makes it so hard for attackers to penetrate your environment. So there will always be a way to go through your environment. So the game is not to reach the absolute security, because it doesn't exist. The game is actually to make it so hard, even for highly motivated individuals or highly motivated organized cyber criminals to penetrate into organizations for one reason to another. So yes, so my contribution to what Lucas have said is to establish a risk-aware culture from day one, to understand that cybersecurity is no less function than marketing or sales or distribution, or it's another cog in the larger machine.
It's the same answer for each and every function in the company. There is no absolute quality. I mean, you can't preclude that a quality issue will happen that basically goes through your quality management system. Even though you have a really good quality management system established since decades, and it still can happen. It's the same with security risk. And in the end, we're talking about, as I say, make it difficult enough so not every skilled attacker gets in. Somebody might get in, and we can't basically defend for each and every contingency. But that's why we look at multiple domains in security. We're not only looking to protect, but also to identify attacks. We're talking about detection of attackers in the system. We're talking about how do we actually respond if somebody managed to get into the company, and how do we recover from that? So all that gives us an answer to what is the right level of security. I mean, you can only respond to so many attacks. You only can recover from so many attacks, and working backward from that ability, what you realistically can respond to and recover from, is really what you have to invest in detection and protection.
That's true. And one of the phrases I like using is, even as an organization, you really can't, hackers, cyber criminals don't sit in boardrooms and plan how to hack your company. So why should you? You basically just need to take a step back and just look at just how, arm of us and how, some of these business units could be disentangled, and just how far removed some of these people within the organization who are actually in charge of cybersecurity and risk are far removed from the threat that is out there. Which is why I think over the years we've moved away from cyber threats. You're now moving towards cyber resiliency, the event of an incident. How quickly do you detect? How quickly do you mitigate? How quickly do you recover? And also, how quickly do you report to the relevant regulatory authorities? I think for me, that is also one of the perspectives that I think organizations perhaps need to start taking a bit more seriously. So if we have any other question in there, not yet. I think we still have about 10 more minutes. If you have any question from the audience, feel free to just jump right into the chat, and then we'll be able to answer it within the time that we have. So Lucas, I'd like to just give you this chance just to tell us what are some of the challenges that you have actually faced, and how you've managed to overcome, communicating and empowering, the decision makers in organizations from the C-suite all the way to the board level.
And as you can imagine, security often faces, yeah, well, it's important, but not here syndrome. So a couple of years back, I was working in a critical infrastructure, and basically the operations of the OT environment were very hesitant to have any security devices in their environment. And what we actually did was a risk workshop to actually look at what cyber risk materializing would look like in that organization. We basically started doing a little bit of an impact workshop, looking at what could happen if this and this component was breached, what could happen if that was breached. And it was quite interesting when two of the engineers at the table got pale and said, well, that's about it. So we're dead in the water. And this basically raised the level of awareness to a point where people understood in their own language, in their own functional domain, what cyber risk means for them. And that's a learning I took away to regardless if I speak to the board, or if I speak to the head of production, or to marketing, I speak their language. I think in their processes. I think about their impact. I talk basically what could happen to you, and are we prepared for that? How can we help you? That's really the game we're playing.
Oh, great. Bilel, what's one of the most difficult conversations you had with one of your clients and driving them into making a decision or seeing the reality in front of them?
I might actually say something very controversial here, that from an offensive cybersecurity perspective, when you're communicating that there are several vulnerable and deliverables from our side to one of our clients, it's hard for the cybersecurity team to accept these facts, as they usually gets pointed at them as their failure to design the cybersecurity environment. So my biggest challenge today lies in the fact that I need to find a way to communicate that, hey, your infrastructure is vulnerable in these layers, and you have to implement an XYZ actionable mitigations, but at the same time to maintain healthy relationships with the cybersecurity team, to not be taken as offensively. And this is more relevant in this part of the world, the GCC and MENA region, more than the Western and the European world, as they are very accustomed to such industries per se, and to such practices per se. But here in this part of the world, when you walk into a company, even to sell a cybersecurity offensive product, they usually look at it as a downside for their operations. So it gets even harder for you to communicate that, which they're gonna be paying heavily for it later on. So this is the key one challenges to do so. But from an organization perspective, I believe that their challenges lies in three layers. One is the company has to have an adequate detection capability. So a cybersecurity company like me, as a technology provider, should be only complementing your cybersecurity environment, not designing it from scratch. So you should be able to do things on your own. So you should be able to know your infrastructure better than I do. If I know your infrastructure better than you are, then you have a bigger problem to deal with. So the second is that they need to have a proper response time and proper response programs in place, which most of my clients don't. You would be quite shocked that even a client that generates $5 to $10 billion a year would still fail to have a proper incident response program. And as soon as the signs of a ransomware or a DDoS attack happens on your infrastructure, everyone starts running around without any proper framework in place, and they start pointing fingers before you to realize how much losses you're actually going to take. So so that's the second challenge from a government from a company perspective. And the third is that is really important as well, is to have a resolution success metrics in your company to understand the so to understand the threat level and the threat profile of your organization. I mean, if you're a pharmaceutical company today, you should know exactly where your assets lie behind, where your digital assets lie behind. And if you go, if you don't know where are those, then you won't be able to set the right parameters for your cybersecurity design, and you'll be spending money left and right or things that doesn't even matter. So it's an entire process. It's an entire set of protocols, and the challenges can go all the way up from the human component, which is the biggest challenge ever. I mean, you can have a multi-million-dollar cybersecurity environment, and you still and a single phishing email can get all of the past 4 years or 5 years of strengthening your cybersecurity environment can go to dust. So it's really important to look at it from every kind of perspective. I think I'm taking a lot of time from the small questions and answers, so I'll wrap it up.
Great. No, that's really insightful, Bilel. And there's one thing that you really mentioned that is something that we've been taking a very serious initiative here at Leverage Experts, and that is how do you measure the effectiveness of your cybersecurity program? You know, it cuts across board, from your risk assessments, from what is your residual risk? How do you quantify your risks as well? How do you communicate this to the relevant teams and everything? And so, for the audience, we'd be more than happy to provide this service to you. There's a link on the chat that you can click on and let us have a conversation. We can do a non-binding free assessment for you. We can look at areas in which myself, Lucas, and Bilel and I can just try and assist your company and your organization to try and get up to scratch with your cybersecurity program. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for your time and also for the insights. That has been very engaging. I'm sure it has been for the audience as well. So we'll have a copy of this recording available for you, for those who couldn't make it, or maybe you can share it with your friends and your colleagues back at work. And maybe one last parting shot from Lucas before we end it.
I think you Bilal said it right. We can invest a couple of millions and still a day in accounting, clicking a link. And as I said, measuring security awareness programs is one of the biggest challenges, and was actually the biggest reason for choosing our current security awareness provider, because they really allow us to even start measuring security awareness. And we probably will have to go way beyond that anyway, but at least some vendors now give you a reasonable idea. And as I said, in the end, security is everybody's job, so to speak, and we need to establish exactly that awareness in the entire organization.
I agree, Lucas. You know, they say that the right numbers never lie. When you lose money, that number, then it never lies. So it's also good to also apply the number to your effectiveness of your cybersecurity framework in the organization. Bilal?
Well, I don't think I don't think I have anything else to add besides what Lucas has already pointed out. Yes, I believe that cybersecurity is a job for everyone, and it has to be embedded in the company's culture. That doesn't matter if it's a small medium-sized enterprises, the large corporate government agency, or whatever it is. Cybersecurity has to be one of the main functions, like any other function within the company, and we have to normalize that, and we have to communicate that to our stakeholders, to our board, and whoever is writing us the check to buy the cybersecurity the defenses in the first place. So so that would be all.
Great. That was an awesome conversation. I really enjoyed myself, and I'm sure the audience did as well. I'd be more than excited to host you guys again. Then we can get maybe some bit of more time, maybe add 30 minutes to the conversation. There's plenty that we can discuss on this, and you know, just bring the insights to the table and see how it is that we can empower each other to just be at a better security standpoint from cyber perspective. Great. So thank you so much, gentlemen. So we call it a day, and do enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you so much.